Greetings. My name is Raymond Hess. I'm the Director of Planning Services at the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada, and we're going to be discussing Onboard today, your future transit plan. So let's get right into it. Today's discussion is going to be focused on three main things. First, we're going to talk about the need for transit in the future and why some of the growth in this area is going to really put strains on our transportation network and therefore is going to require us to think about transportation solutions to move all those people around. As a result, we're going to talk about some possibilities related to our existing bus route system as well as next generation transit, such as light rail, things of that nature. And then lastly, we'll talk about some emerging technology that's going to be incorporated into the study as well. So if you're not familiar with the Regional Transportation Commission, we're responsible for many things related to transportation. Many of you know us as the transit providers. So we're responsible for running buses throughout the valley. We are also responsible for roadway planning and funding. That is to say that a lot of funding in the form of gas tax and sales tax comes to the RTC and is then redistributed to the local jurisdictions for their use and improvement of the roadway network and trails and things of that nature. We are also the Traffic Management Center, which is known as the Freeway Arterial System of Transportation, or FAST. They do the signal coordination timing, the dynamic message signs that you see on the freeway that tell you how many more minutes to interchange or if there's a crash up ahead. They also do the ramp metering, the red and green lights that you see when you get on the freeway. And then lastly, we are Southern Nevada Strong. This is a regional planning initiative that was brought over to us from City of Henderson, and we are responsible for coordinating the valley's efforts to be more sustainable as it relates to economic development, education, transportation choices, housing choices, and complete communities. So this area is expected to experience tremendous growth as it has historically for the next 10 plus years and beyond. The study that we're looking at for Onboard will go out to the year 2040. But just to give you an idea about some of the growth and demand that we're expected to have, we currently have 2.1 million residents in Southern Nevada. In less than 10 years, we expect that number to go to 2.7 million residents in Southern Nevada. To put this into a little bit of perspective, the city of Henderson has roughly 300,000 inhabitants in it. And so in 10 years from now, expect the population of 2 more city of Hendersons to be added to our valley. Think about all that demand that's going to create on our transportation system. Similarly, we have 43 million visitors that come to Southern Nevada every year. And in less than 10 years, we expect that number to go to 53 million visitors. So again, if you just think about all of the demands of those visitors from the airport to the Strip to downtown or to any location that they're going, there's just a lot of need for transportation to move these people around our valley in conjunction with the local residents that we just talked about as well. Next, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about transit demand as it exists today and what we expect it to look like in the future. So the map on the screen shows density of either where people live or where they work. So the red shows the highest concentrations of density. As you might expect, that relates to where we have the most amount of jobs right now. So you see the Las Vegas Strip is identified, you see downtown identified, and then the areas in blue also have high density, but not quite as intense as the red areas. Now, density is an important consideration for transit because if you think about the more people that we have in a given area, the more likelihood that a certain percentage of those people might ride transit. And so you have a lot of transportation demand where you have blue or red on this map. So this is the picture today, but if we look out to 2040, which is the horizon year of our study, you'll see that there's more red that comes on the map and there's a lot more blue that comes on the map. So the red around the Strip kind of permeates outward, and then you see new areas of blue pop up in North Las Vegas and Henderson, out on the west side and the northeast as well. So again, this is just where you're going to have high concentrations of where people either work or where they live, and the need for them to get to and from those areas is going to be substantial. To give you an idea of transit as it exists today, the RTC is very proud about how many people we serve and the service that we provide to the community. So for our residential routes, we serve 140,000 residential passenger trips per day, or what we like to call boardings. We also, 85% of those who use the RTC's system, our transit buses, use it to get to and from work. And then 40% of the other trips are for recreational, educational, and medical purposes as well. So this is an important consideration because it really illustrates how transit is important for the community, is important for our residents. It really connects them to not only where they need to work and where they live, but also where they need to go to get other services, such as education, medical, shopping, things of that nature. When we talk about visitors, they also have a lot of usage, or they use transit quite a bit as well. So we have 35,000 passenger trips per weekday on our two routes that service the Las Vegas Strip, the SDX and the Deuce. And so, again, if you just combine those two numbers together, that's 175,000 boardings per day on our buses. That's quite a bit. The visitors account for 30% of our total transit revenue. This is an important consideration because the two routes on the Strip, SDX and Deuce, they are actually revenue generating. They're some of the only profitable transit routes in the country because there is such high demand to move up and down the Strip that they are actually, the cost of running those buses is offset entirely by what we call fare box recovery. The amount that people pay for the tickets to get on the bus offsets the entire cost and then some for the Strip routes. So as a result, we're very proud of the fact that we rank very well nationally when it comes to our transit operations. So we are considered first in the country when it comes to lowest operating cost. We are considered first in the country when it comes to the lowest subsidy. And we are first in the country when it comes to fare box recovery, the ticket sales that we have. So now let's talk a little bit about onboard and what it specifically will do. There are three different components of onboard. The first is focused on the fixed route network, or what we call traditional transit improvement. Then we'll talk about high capacity transit options. And by high capacity transit, I'm specifically talking about kind of this next generation of transit. Modern streetcar, bus rapid transit, light rail, things that are transit that's kind of operating in its own dedicated right-of-way and may or may not include rail. And then we're also going to be looking at emerging transit technology opportunities as part of this study. The field of transportation planning is changing incredibly fast, and we want to make sure that we're responsive to some of those changes as part of this study so that the recommendations that come out of the study are not invalid by the time they hit the street. So let's go into a little bit more detail on each of these. On traditional transit, we want to understand what are the existing needs of our transit users. So where could new routes benefit the Valley? Where do folks want to see more frequent service? And where would faster service benefit transit riders as well? When we talk about high capacity transit, we're specifically looking at what are some of the best practices out in the country that we can learn from. Specifically, we are looking at what we call our Intermountain West partners. So Salt Lake City, Denver, and Phoenix. We're specifically looking at best practices from those communities. And then we're also looking at communities that have a high tourism as part of their economy. So we're also looking at Orlando and San Diego as well. We also want to learn about high capacity corridors. So what are the areas that are best suited or could best support this high capacity transit? So if we were to consider something like light rail or bus rapid transit, bus that operates in a dedicated lane, or modern streetcar, where are the areas that would best serve the community and would generate the most ridership? Another thing that's pretty exciting about this study is we're not looking at transit in isolation. We are also working with the local jurisdictions, the cities and the counties on development opportunities with any of these, especially the high capacity transit corridors. So for example, if we were to designate a certain roadway as a light rail system, are there opportunities to partner with the city or the county on what are called transit-oriented development? Are there ways to look at increased density along those corridors that could redevelop an area and allow for new jobs, new residents to live along that corridor? When we talk about emerging transit technologies, one of the things we really want to understand is what is out there. The technological advances are changing by the day, and we really want to understand what the state of the practice is at the time of this study. But more importantly, we also want to understand how change will affect the recommendations that come out of this plan. So we'll put certain triggers into the plan that will make us reevaluate some of our assumptions if our assumptions become outdated. And then also we want to understand the impacts to our community. Technology can enhance and may take away from transit ridership as well. So we want to understand as this technological advances come into play in our community, we want to understand how that affects transit demand. When we talk about the benefits of high capacity transit in particular, and transit in general, we think there are 6 distinct advantages. The first is that it makes Southern Nevada a better place to live, work, and play. We also think that it contributes to the health and safety of the community. It also attracts a talented workforce and makes Southern Nevada much more competitive. It improves accessibility and mobility. It makes Southern Nevada a better place to visit, and it boosts the region's economy. And our study, for example, we have a transit-oriented development briefing book that's going to come out that's going to talk about some of the redevelopment opportunities when you have investments in transit. We have a high-capacity transit briefing book online already, if you want to go check out that resource, that shows you what is transit-oriented development, what is high-capacity transit, and explains how some of these benefits have been documented in other communities. So just to give you an idea about what this process will entail and how long it will take, we expect this process to take about 18 months. We're about just over 6 months into the process. We hope to be finished by late summer, early fall of 2018. We've identified the purpose and need already. As I mentioned to you, it kind of really just hinges on this fact that there's going to be a lot of growth in this region, both in terms of visitors as well as local residents, and we need to find transportation solutions to accommodate them. We're currently working on development of alternatives, and we're also looking at ways that we'll evaluate those alternatives as well. And then all of that will be folded up into a recommendation and final plans in summer of 2018. So I mentioned the universe of corridors or this alternatives that are out there. We did several different public outreach. We worked with stakeholders. We worked with the community. We had a public survey that helped us identify which corridors we should be looking at for especially high-capacity transit. So the map you see on the presentation right now shows the corridors that are up for consideration, and there are a lot of them. We have a lot of work to do to evaluate all these and see which ones actually could serve the purposes of transportation for our community the best. That's going to be the next stage that we're currently working on. But this is exciting. There's a lot of potential corridors for us to look at, and we feel like this is a good starting point for us to see what the needs are of everyone. So we're going to evaluate those corridors based on the following 5 goals. The first is to make transit more compelling. Then we're going to look at improving regional connectivity. We're going to encourage responsible development. We want to make Southern Nevada more competitive. And lastly, we want to develop sustainable solutions. Under each one of these goals, there are several objectives, and under each of those objectives are measurable outcomes that we have data points that we can look at to see how well each of these corridors operates under each of goals. All right, so just to let you know about the next steps, we're continuing community engagement. We have a pretty aggressive outreach campaign. We're presenting to community groups. We're doing pop-up events. Anybody that will have us will come out to them. You'll notice in the background a picture of a bus. This is a very cool tool that we have in our toolbox now. We're partnership with MV Transportation to have this literal mobile workshop that we can pull up to events. The inside of the bus has been gutted, and we can have demonstrations inside related to onboard. We have surveys that we can take. We even have a kids' play area so that people with families that want to come in and give us their input, they don't have to worry about Junior. Junior's in the bus in the back playing with some toys while the parents can take some surveys and fill out some information. We're looking at the universal corridor evaluation. Like I mentioned a moment ago, we have this big map with a lot of lines. It would be difficult to do all of those lines that are indicated on the map. And so we're looking at evaluating those, and we have the criteria that we're currently applying to those. And then we currently also are reviewing the best practices from our peer cities. So we have an initial draft of that we're currently reviewing, and we're going to post that on our website soon as well. So just to recap, there are kind of 3 things that hopefully you take away from this presentation. The first is that there's going to be a lot of growth and demand in the community when it comes to transportation. And we believe that transit is part of the solution. It's not obviously the only solution, but we think it's one of the solutions that should be considered as part of our mobility needs for the community. The onboard plan is going to set a transit vision for the next 20 plus years out to 2040, and we want people to really buy into this vision, which is why we're trying to reach as many people as possible, take in as much input as possible into this process, and make sure it reflects what the community's desires are. And lastly, in order to do that, we really want to hear from you. So we have an online survey now. You can go and take it. We're taking that feedback on a daily basis and incorporating into it. If you have a community group that you'd like us to present to, please let us know, and we'll gladly come out and present to them. So for more information, you can go to our website, which is onboardsnv.com. We have a lot of information on there. We have some resources. We have upcoming events. Anything you would want to know about the study is uploaded to that website. So please visit it, and please get in touch with us if you'd like us to come talk to you more. Thank you.